What if I told you that the world before the flood was unlike anything you've ever imagined? A time when giants walked among men, when angels descended from heaven to corrupt creation, and when the earth itself cried out under the weight of blood and violence. This isn't a forgotten myth. It's the hidden history of humanity that the Bible dares to reveal. The story of Eden's beauty turned into tragedy, of the first murder that stained the ground, of the Watchers and their monstrous offspring, and of a judgment so severe that it erased nearly every trace of mankind. All of it builds toward one of the most powerful moments in history, the flood. Yet within this storm of destruction, God was weaving a thread of hope that still speaks to us today. Many believe the flood is simply a children's story with animals and rainbows. But what if its meaning is far deeper, far darker, and far more urgent than we've been told? What if this ancient narrative is not only history, but also a warning, pointing to the days we are living in right now? This film will take you on a journey into the lost world before the flood, a journey through creation, corruption, judgment, and covenant. A story that reveals not only the justice of God, but also His mercy, His promises, and His plan for redemption. Prepare yourself, because once you see what really happened, you'll never read the Bible the same way again. In the beginning, everything was order, beauty, and light. Creation reflected the harmony of a flawless world, where every detail radiated the glory of the Creator. Eden was not just a garden, it was the living portrait of communion between God and man. There, Adam and Eve experienced God's presence like a gentle breeze surrounding them. No guilt, no fear, no pain. It was the perfect stage for what the human heart has always longed for, unity with the Creator. But this perfection was soon challenged by the cunning serpent. She didn't come with violence, but with subtle doubt. Did God really say that? Temptation entered not with a shout, but with a whisper. By doubting God's word, Adam and Eve opened a crack in what was meant to be eternal. The forbidden fruit wasn't just food. It was a symbol of the heart's desire to be independent from God, a rebellion to claim the throne of their own existence. The result was devastating. The fall didn't just bring shame, it brought separation. Man, who once walked freely with God, now hid among the trees. Eve's face was stained with tears, and Adam's eyes, once radiant with light, darkened with the sorrow of losing what should never have been lost. Eden was closed, and with it, the immediate access to eternity was shut. The expulsion from the garden marked the dawn of a new era. Thorns, sweat, and pain replaced abundance and peace. Yet even in judgment, there was a seed of hope. The promise that the woman's offspring would crush the serpent's head sparked a hidden flame. Even in the fall, God left a glimpse of redemption, as if to whisper, this is not the end of the story. And it is in this contrast between lost glory and future promise that humanity's story unfolds. From here, we will witness how sin spreads through history, how the human heart grows hard, and how the perfect world turns into a stage of violence, pain, and blood. But could this same promise, hidden in Eden, shine again before the flood? After leaving Eden, Adam and Eve faced the harsh reality of a broken world. Yet, even in sorrow, life continued. Their sons, Cain and Abel, brought offerings to God, each reflecting the condition of their hearts. Abel offered the best of his flock in faith, while Cain's gift lacked surrender. This difference ignited a storm within Cain. Jealousy, bitterness, and anger began to consume him like fire. In a tragic moment, Cain lured his brother into the field, and the first murder stained the earth with innocent blood. The ground that once blossomed with life now drank the tears of violence. Abel's cry rose to heaven, a testimony against the corruption already spreading in human hearts. It was not just a crime, it was the symbol of humanity's descent into rivalry, hatred, and division. As generations passed, Cain's line expanded into cities, music, and metalwork. Civilization flourished, but so did pride and violence. Humanity's progress in culture and technology was not matched by growth in righteousness. Instead, it revealed how far man could advance while drifting further from God. What was meant to reflect divine creativity turned into tools of arrogance and destruction. The shadow grew darker with Lamech, a descendant of Cain, who boasted of killing men and claimed vengeance greater than Cain's. The spirit of rebellion multiplied, and society celebrated violence as power. It was a chilling echo of the serpent's lie, the desire to be gods without God. Humanity was building more than cities. It was constructing a world system rooted in pride and bloodshed, and yet beneath this corruption, a question lingers. Could the heart of man be redeemed, or was it destined to spiral endlessly downward? This tension prepares the stage for the next chapter, where not only human ambition, but also supernatural forces would invade history, bringing about an even greater darkness. As humanity multiplied, another force entered the stage. Beings not of earth, but of heaven. The Watchers, angels who were meant to observe and guard, abandoned their divine assignment. Drawn by the beauty of human women, they descended upon Mount Hermon, making a pact of rebellion. 200 of them bound themselves to this decision, stepping into forbidden territory where heaven met earth in corruption. These fallen ones took wives for themselves and fathered the Nephilim. Giants, mighty men of old, feared tyrants who dominated the earth. Their stature and strength inspired terror, but their presence was more than physical. They carried with them the arrogance of rebellion, blending heaven's might with earth's frailty. What emerged was a distorted race, a shadow of creation's original design, twisting God's intention for humanity. But the corruption did not end with bloodlines. The Watchers taught mankind forbidden knowledge, sorcery, astrology, weapon-making, and even arts that tampered with nature itself. What seemed like wisdom was, in reality, chains of darkness. The seeds of idolatry, war, and occult practices were sown into civilization. What God created as pure was now being perverted at its very core. Azazel, one of their leaders, instructed men in the art of warfare and bloodshed, while others introduced charms and enchantments. Women were taught how to manipulate beauty, turning desire into a weapon. Society marveled at this new wisdom, unaware that it was a poison disguised as progress. Humanity was advancing rapidly, but each step forward led further away from the Creator. The world was no longer simply human. It had become a hybrid of flesh and spirit, of rebellion and pride. Giants walked the earth, terrorizing communities, while men worshipped the very beings who enslaved them. And as the cries of oppression reached heaven, a new question arose. How long would God allow this invasion of corruption before his judgment fell? In the midst of darkness and corruption, one man stood out, Enoch. Unlike the rest of his generation, Enoch walked with God. His life was a living testimony that intimacy with the Creator was still possible, even in a world drowning in rebellion. While others bowed to idols and giants ruled with terror, Enoch's footsteps echoed with a different rhythm, the rhythm of heaven. Enoch became a prophet, announcing the coming judgment. He spoke of a God who would not remain silent forever, a God who would descend with his holy ones to execute justice. His words pierced through the corruption, warning both men and angels that their actions had consequences. To a world drunk with violence and arrogance, Enoch's voice was a thunderclap of truth. But Enoch saw more than judgment. In visions, he glimpsed the mysteries of the heavens, portals, spheres of light, and the destiny of the fallen angels. He recorded these revelations, leaving behind writings that spoke of the cosmic battle between light and darkness. The Book of Enoch became a testimony that the unseen world was not far away, but deeply intertwined with human history. Then came the moment that set Enoch apart from all others. He was taken by God without tasting death. One day he walked on earth, and the next he was no longer here because God had carried him away. His departure was both a mystery and a sign. Righteousness has a reward, and heaven's reality is greater than death itself. Yet his absence left a void. Without the prophet's voice, humanity sank deeper into the abyss. With Enoch gone, the shadows thickened, and the rebellion of men and angels grew unchecked. The silence after his departure raised a chilling question. If God's messenger was removed, what storm of judgment was about to unfold? After Enoch's departure, the earth fell into chaos. The Nephilim, towering giants with insatiable appetites, enslaved humanity. They demanded sacrifices of blood, consuming both animals and men, turning worship into terror. Altars of corruption filled the land, and the cries of the innocent rose like smoke to heaven. What God had declared very good was now drenched in violence and despair. The Watchers, who had sworn their pact on Mount Hermon, tightened their grip over humanity. They reigned as false gods, demanding devotion while corrupting every corner of creation. Their offspring, the Nephilim, devastated the earth, devouring resources, destroying cities, and ruling as tyrants. The very ground groaned under the weight of their oppression, and it seemed as though all hope had vanished. But heaven was not silent. God sent his archangels, Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel, with orders of judgment. Michael, the warrior, prepared to strike down the armies of the giants. Raphael, the healer, was commanded to bind Azazel and cast him into the desert. Gabriel was tasked to stir the nations against the Nephilim, igniting battles that would weaken their dominion. The clash between heaven's messengers and the forces of darkness was unlike anything seen before. The battles were fierce. Giants roared, shaking the earth, but one by one they fell under the hand of God's judgment. The Watchers were seized, chained, and cast into the abyss reserved for the final judgment. Their cries echoed in the deep, reminders that rebellion against the Creator could not endure forever. For the first time in generations, humanity glimpsed justice breaking through the clouds of despair. And yet, even after the fall of the Watchers and the defeat of many Nephilim, the world remained stained. Corruption had spread too deeply, and mankind's heart continued to embrace violence. The intervention of heaven was powerful, but it was only a prelude. A greater act of judgment and mercy was still to come, one that would shake the very foundations of the earth. In a world drowning in wickedness, one man caught God's eye: Noah. Unlike his generation, Noah was righteous, walking faithfully with the Creator. When the world echoed with violence and corruption, his heart beat in harmony with heaven. While others mocked the idea of judgment, Noah listened, and God chose him as the vessel of hope. The command was clear but staggering: build an ark, a massive structure unlike anything seen before. It was not a ship of human invention, but of divine blueprint, designed to withstand the fury of waters that would cleanse the earth. To his neighbors, it was madness. To Noah, it was obedience. Every hammer strike was a sermon. Every wooden beam was a prophecy of coming judgment. His work became a spectacle. People gathered, laughing at the crazy preacher who claimed the skies would pour floods. They mocked him as he cut timber, shaped planks, and sealed the vessel with pitch. But Noah did not waver. Faith anchored him stronger than their ridicule, and the vision of God's promise was louder than their insults. His family joined him in the labor, carrying wood, shaping tools, and preparing the animals that would one day enter the ark. Together, they stood as a living testimony that righteousness could endure even in the midst of a corrupted generation. With every passing year, the ark grew taller, a silent monument of judgment and salvation. And so the world stood divided. On one side, scoffers building their empires of sin. On the other, Noah building God's refuge. The contrast could not be sharper. But the ark was not just about wood and nails. It was about trust, about obedience, about hope in the face of an unseen future. Soon, the skies would answer, and the world would learn whose foundation would stand. The day finally arrived when the warnings of heaven became reality. Dark clouds gathered over the earth, and the skies that had once nourished life now prepared to unleash judgment. For centuries, man had mocked Noah, but now his ark stood like a beacon of truth against the backdrop of fear. As the first drops of rain fell, the world shifted from laughter to terror. The fountains of the deep burst open, and the heavens poured relentlessly. For 40 days and 40 nights, the waters consumed the earth. Cities, temples, and mighty walls crumbled beneath the rising tide. The Nephilim, once feared as untouchable, were swept away, their voices drowned in the roar of God's justice. Every altar of corruption was torn down, every idol silenced by the flood. Inside the ark, Noah and his family listened as the storm raged. The cries of men and beasts echoed outside, but within there was refuge. The ark, carried by the waters, became a symbol of God's mercy in the midst of wrath. The animals, 2 by 2, bore witness to the preservation of life, while outside, the earth was cleansed of its defilement. Day after day, the rain did not cease. What was once familiar disappeared beneath the waves, fields, mountains, and kingdoms alike. The flood erased the pride of man, proving that no tower of rebellion could stand against the hand of the Creator. The waters leveled the earth, leaving only the ark afloat, a testimony of obedience in a world of ruin. But judgment was not the final word. Even as the waters rose, God's plan was not to destroy hope, but to preserve it. In the silence after the storm, as the ark drifted across the endless sea, a promise lingered. Beyond the flood, a new beginning awaited. Yet the question remained, what would this new world look like when the waters finally receded? At last, after months of silence, the waters began to recede. The ark, carried by the currents of judgment, came to rest on the slopes of Mount Ararat. From its window, Noah gazed upon a world transformed, once filled with cities and corruption, now reduced to a canvas awaiting new life. The echoes of destruction gave way to the stillness of renewal. Noah sent out a raven, which never returned, and then a dove, which came back carrying a fresh olive branch. That simple leaf became the most powerful symbol of hope, a sign that life was sprouting again, that God's mercy was still at work. The flood had wiped away rebellion, but it had not erased God's desire to restore creation. Stepping out of the ark, Noah built an altar. Unlike the corrupt sacrifices demanded by the Nephilim, this offering was pure, rising as a pleasing aroma before the Lord. In that moment, God established a covenant with Noah, a promise written not on stone, but painted across the sky itself. The rainbow arched above the clouds, declaring that never again would a flood destroy all living creatures. This covenant was more than a pledge. It was a bridge between judgment and grace. Humanity had been given a second chance, a fresh beginning carved out of devastation. The rainbow became heaven's reminder that even when wrath is necessary, mercy triumphs in the end. It was the Creator's way of saying, "My justice is real, but so is my love." And as Noah's family looked up at that arc of colors, they saw more than light bending through water. They saw a divine signature of hope. The earth was scarred, but it was also blessed with promise. Yet, as history would prove, this covenant was only a shadow of something greater still to come, a promise that pointed to redemption far beyond the rainbow. The story of the world before the flood is more than ancient history. It's a mirror held up to our own generation. Humanity turned away from God, embraced corruption, and filled the earth with violence. Yet in the midst of judgment, God preserved a remnant, offering hope through Noah and sealing his covenant with a rainbow. That same God still offers us hope today. The questions remain: are we walking with God like Noah, or drifting with the corruption of the crowd? Are we building an ark of obedience in our lives, or mocking the warnings of his word? The flood teaches us that divine patience has limits, but mercy is always extended before judgment comes. Now it is your turn to reflect. What does the covenant of the rainbow mean to you personally? How do you see God's mercy shining in your own storms of life? And most importantly, if judgment were to come tomorrow, would your name be among those preserved by faith? This story is not just about what was lost. It's about what can still be gained. It's about hope rising from devastation and a God who never abandons his creation. The rainbow was his promise then, and his promises remain unshaken even now. So I invite you, share your thoughts in the comments below, like this video, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss another journey into the hidden truths of the Bible. Together, let's keep uncovering the mysteries that strengthen our faith and prepare us for what is yet to come.